Let's now talk about the concept of discourse in discourse historical approach. Frankly speaking, it's not very different from general critical discourse analysis, but it is obviously a lot different from traditional discourse analysis. Discourse, traditionally speaking, can be defined as the unit of language beyond a sentence level which carries certain logical meanings and which has a certain social purpose. In a discourse historical approach or in critical discourse analysis in general, we see that discourse is defined as something which is socially purposeful, which contains certain strong social meaning and somehow is problem oriented. I'll just elaborate here 10 important features of discourse which are usually understood as a part of discourse in under the umbrella of discourse historical approach. First one is the discourse is socially constituted, and it is constitutive of many social ideologies or identities or many other socio-cultural norms and values. So it is not only constituted by a certain society or a group of people based on their certain ideologies and identities, and therefore it reflects their ideas, their thoughts, leading towards their identities, which sometimes is a part of our analysis or goals of our analysis. And in order to grasp the political character of discourses, we need to look into functional pragmatics also, which leads us to think about the pragmatic meanings or the hidden meanings of the text or discourses. Secondly, we can say that with respect to its socially constitutive character, discourse represents, creates, and reproduces, and sometimes even changes social reality. The way a social reality is perceived by people who are going through that reality is shown through the words they speak about it. It is shown through the discourse they create about it. So sometimes it may be taken in a socially acceptable way, and sometimes it may be taken as in a different way. As we say in a real world scenario, there is a very common saying these days that one community's terrorist is another community's martyr. When there are such gap in the ideologies of different communities living on this planet Earth, there would certainly be certain discrepancies in the view of social realities. So realities are perceived differently by different people, and if you look at it from a micro social perspective, even in your own family, you can see that a certain event is interpreted or is taken differently by different members of your family, and this can be enlarged on world scale or a national scale, and you can say that different events would be interpreted differently. Therefore, what you say may be different from what others say in the same community. Therefore, it is assumed that in a socially constitutive sense, discourse not only carries an ideology, rather it is reproduces and sometimes changes social reality. Then we can say that with respect to its semiotic and pragmatic character, a discourse is a communicative and interactional micro unit. It doesn't happen in a kind of a social gap. Rather, it happens in the real world where people interact with each other, and they bring out meanings through their communication. Meaning is not something which can be limited to somebody's mind only. Rather, when people interact with each other, their meanings become to the surface. So the meanings or discourse is very much communicative also. And then we can say that a discourse is composed of specific groups of actual text, conversations, interactions, and other semiotic, signal-based events also. So a discourse is not reduced to words, rather it is also to our body gestures, symbols, signs, even road posts, advertisement signs. It is composed of so many other things. So it's not a single unit of words only, rather it can be elaborated or it can be composed of various other aspects also. These concrete semiotic units can be taken as tokens, and they are always produced by certain specific individuals for a certain purpose in a certain context, and all these needs to be interpreted in order to understand the meaning of that particular discourse. Then the actual discursive units relate to specific genres. Our discourse is always a part of a certain group of discourses which form the overall character of that group. For example, there could be a certain genre of official discourse, there could be a certain genre of informal, friendly discourse, or a kind of media discourse. So discourse is in real world is always divided into various genres, and that help people understand the real meaning of discourse, because in a certain genre something may be acceptable, but in another genre the same choice of words may not be acceptable. Let's say in genre of poetry, poets usually use hyperbolic expressions, they use exaggerated metaphors, but in a typical political parliamentary speech, those images, those metaphors may not be that welcomed as they are done in a kind of poetry discourse. Then the discursive units belonging to a specific discourse are intertextually linked by a macro topic which is related to the arguments of that particular field. So as I said earlier, discourses do not happen to fall in isolation, rather they are interlinked with other discourses of the same group, and then they are also interlinked with certain socio-cultural macro social topics also. Then discourses are situated within political, economic fields of action. The discursive units are functionally connected within these fields of action, and these fields of action form the frames for discourses. When we say frames for discourses, we mean within which they are constituted and through which they can be understood, they can be criticized, they can be analyzed. So these socio-political events or situations within which these discourses fall are actually the tools to understand these discourses and their meanings and the hidden power relations within the discourses also. And then within these functional frames, discourses become parts of some kinds of disposives and contribute to the constitution of social order. As I said earlier, discourses do not happen in isolation. They are part of certain bigger social reality, and through which we can see in the depth of those discourses. Therefore, usually the discourses are goal-oriented, and they're a part of a network of discourses which employ similar knowledge, information. Information may be less or more, maybe surface level or deep, but they are interrelated to each other, and they usually form one section of our social reality in our mind. And then discourses help us to organize, reproduce, and transform social relations. They help us to understand and change those social relations also, including power relations, positions, institutions, and knowledge about ideologies, identities in a society also. Discourses develop around social problems. In DHA it is believed, and in general CDA also, that discourses are not just collection of words. They are not simple texts which have a linguistic purpose only. Rather, discourses have a very clear social purpose, and they are based and they develop from a certain kind of social problem, and within those discourses that social problem is elaborated, is highlighted, and sometimes in a serious analysis solutions are also provided to sort out that problem. And this also involves various claims of truthfulness and normative rightness also. How we view a social problem is also a test of our judgment about a certain truth or normative rightness also. Then finally, discourse undergoes historical change relating to social change. Discourses do not remain static. They are not fixed for lifetime. As a theory may not be static for all time. Theory keeps on prospering, keep on changing. Most of the theories in the world, they keep on prospering. Similarly, discourses cannot remain static. They have a history, they have a present, and they continue to make history. So discourses should be read, should be understood according to discourse historical approach in line and in light of the previous discourses of the same nature. So in short, we can say that various discourses produced by people have a history, and they should be understood in the light of that history.